PK52, the Saturday morning meeting. Well, today we're going to talk about presentation skills. And there's a lot of things going on in all industries right now. Things are changing. As we talked over the last couple of weeks, there's a lot of consumers right now that are very interested in a fully electric car. There is a big learning curve to be able to move into electric cars. Some are buying electric cars right now and really not knowing anything about them. I get that. It's the trend. Then there's hybrid electric, which is still electrification of a car, and there's fossil fuels. There's a lot of decisions to be made. Manufacturers are changing everything in their lineup right now. Big family mover vehicles are leaving the V6 power plant and going to four cylinders. Some four-cylinder turbo or twin turbo. So it's interesting because I go back far enough that the domestic side was still building V8 engines. So everybody wanted a V8. If you bought a V6 back when I started, it was an underperforming engine. It just wouldn't perform like the V8 at all. I started selling Toyotas, we didn't have a V8 or a V6. It was all four cylinders. I remember as the 4Runner evolved into similar to what we have right now, as we went into the 1990 model, we still sold a four cylinder that only had 116 horsepower. Now, we also had a V6 at that time, but only had 150 horsepower, and it really didn't make the vehicle any faster, it just made more noise. But that 116 horsepower 4Runner went on a long time. It ran in traffic. It would run at highway speeds. It would very rarely ever have an issue. The thing, that engine and that drivetrain was virtually bulletproof. And we sold a lot of those, but then everything changes like all times with products. They make a big evolve or a big revolution, and that went into now big power plants came back, V8s came back. You started getting stuff like the Hellcat. You started getting stuff like the Dodge TRX with, almost 800 horsepower. Same thing with the Raptor trucks. So you got half-ton trucks that have race car engines in them, and people started buying those. Now the coin is flipped again, because we're starting to talk about the environment and how everything needs to change and everything. So now some of these bigger vehicles are into four cylinders. Well, the customers don't know anything about it at all. So the presenter, the sales professional, has to be the key. They can do research online. And for example, if you go to YouTube, you can look at any product you want to look at, and there's somebody out there that's an influencer that's done a presentation on the product. What happens is they'll get a vehicle from, let's say, Toyota. Toyota will say, you can have the vehicle. Here's the things we want you to say about the vehicle. So they give them a roster or bullet points, and they make sure that they say all of that, or they'll never get another vehicle from Toyota. So it's already preloaded. They're going to tell everybody what we should be telling everybody, but it's just a generalization of the car. And then they're going to give their opinion whether the car drives good, whether it's soft ride or a hard ride, whether it handles, whether it's got enough power. And that's going to be their overall assessment, and they allow them to do that. The products change so much for every automotive manufacturer that I have to become a product professional. I need my product knowledge to go up, but it doesn't matter. I can take any really good salesperson and sit down and they can tell me about the product. Given time, they can tell me what I need to know, but the problem is time. Do you always get enough time to be able to say enough or to get the customer involved enough to be able to make a sale? To convince them that your product is the best product out there for what they're trying to achieve. And that takes a great presenter. So let's talk about this. In this class right here that I've taught for years, one of the things I talk about is Socratic questioning, the teachings of Socrates. One of the main deals with Socrates is Socrates didn't make any mistakes, because what Socrates would do is listen. You're never going to make a mistake or a statement that's false if you're not talking. So people would come to Socrates, and if you don't know the story, people would take pilgrimages to come to talk to him because something's gone wrong in their life, and they wanted somebody that was super intelligent, this great philosopher, to give them the meaning of life. Isn't that amazing? I guess in today's world, we're still seeking that person out, right? So they would go, and Socrates would say, tell me what your issues are. He didn't start out by saying, here's what you need to do. He didn't just read off a roster, do these three things and go out and take care of it. He'd go, tell me what's going on. And they walked all the way to talk to the guy. They'd spill their hearts out. Well, here's what's going on. And he goes, wow, that's troubling. Can you tell me more? And you say, tell me more to somebody, they're going to tell you more. It's almost like magic. If somebody tells you, well, I'm looking to buy a car and I'm really interested in this, you say, really, that's very interesting. Can you tell me more? They're going to tell you more. I think he would use the word and. I don't know what the word and is in Greek, but he would say and. If you finish the sentence, they start talking, you go and. They're going to add. So the longer you keep the customer talking about what they've studied, what they've researched, what's important to them, the better off you are. And that's what Socrates would do, or a psychiatrist or a psychologist. That's what they've done. They've learned how to listen to people so that when they make an assessment, they're making an assessment with the two words that I love the most, which are you said. Earlier you said you have two children and you said safety was paramount to you. Is that correct? And now I can show them something that would make the car safer for their children. I know I've got a positive. I know this is going to be something they're interested in because they told me up front they had two children and safety was important because I was willing to listen long enough to find out what was most important to them and prompt them to tell me more. So tell me more. So you're looking at the Honda and the Toyota. You're also looking at the Ford product. So in your research, what have you found out about the Toyota product? Why would I ever start telling somebody something that I knew when the most important thing to any consumer is what they know? So we go digital because I don't like to ever leave digital. If I got a lead on somebody that's going to come in on Saturday, on a Tuesday, why do we think it's okay just to contact them once? I can't wait to see you on Saturday. So I'll just puzzle you this. How do commercials work? 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 Enough, right? So how many times do you need to see the Dorito commercial when you're watching a football, baseball, or basketball game until they drive you to the store to buy a bag of Doritos? I've never watched enough Doritos commercials to be able to leave my house to go to the store for a bag of Doritos. However, when I'm in the store, if they planted that in my brain and I'm on the Dorito aisle, you know what? Maybe I grab a bag of Doritos because the 4 billion times that they've hit me with Doritos are really good, man, try this flavor, or Taco Bell. You hear the bell, boom. So now I'm going to get up from my couch and drive to Taco Bell. No, I'm going to call Grubhub and have it come an hour later and have it be soggy Taco Bell. But the thing about it is Taco Bell runs commercials over and over and over and over and over again. When you're out and you see a Taco Bell sign, you're hungry, you might pull into Taco Bell. So if that's the way commercials work, if volume of the information works, then you need to do that when you're selling anything or when you're communicating with a buyer. So I'm going to make sure that multiple times in multiple different ways, I've given them the same kind of information based upon what's most important to them. So the beginning of any sales process should always start with what's most important to the consumer. It's their money. It's their time. They're the one that's going to make the decision. You can aid in that decision by your product ability, but it's still their money and their decision. So why not use the things that are most important to them to start the conversation? And then you can use the you said. Earlier you said, I believe you said, when we were talking earlier, if I'm not wrong, didn't you say? Again, I want to make sure that I give them credit for the research they've done. You know, as you were looking at this product and you've done some research, I know that, what stood out to you and what can I help you with? So question, question, question. I'll never be wrong or run anybody off if I'm allowing them to talk. The bigger you make that, the bigger it is. So as we look into great presenters, there's been great presenters in the world. Let's talk about midnight. Somebody's watching TV on midnight and somebody comes out with a towel. And this towel is small. It's not a big towel. But if you dropped it into a swimming pool, all the water would be gone. And that towel was called the ShamWow. Okay, so I know some people that bought the ShamWow. It didn't really measure up to what they said it would measure up to because the product wasn't as good as the presentation. The presentation was fantastic. The product wasn't. We're in a time of the year, in the winter time, right after the end of the year, in the beginning of the next year, that almost every time you sit down to watch anything on TV, you're going to hear about weight loss. That's right, weight loss. If you hate the gym, if you hate working out, if you take one lipozine a day, you'll never have to work out again and the weight will just melt off of you. It's a money back guarantee. Okay, so the crazy thing about it is the overpromise of this is irrelevant because the person has been thinking in their mind, I really need to lose weight. I really need to get back in shape. I don't really have time to do this. And all of a sudden, right there, they've been working on that, and they know this time of year, that's people think about that, so they spend millions of dollars in advertisements multiple times until finally after the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th time they've seen the product, they order it. They still shake weight. So you can shake this weight and you're going to get, in the bodybuilder they had on there, this guy was gigantic. He's going like, look at this, what happened? And you're thinking like, man, I can shake that 5 minutes a day and get in that kind of shape. So again, presentations make people buy. But the crazy thing about it is the majority of people I'm talking to right now, your product is better than your presentation. Your product is unbelievable and it's getting better every single year. So in order to do a great presentation, I believe you need to write it down. Let's go back to when you're in high school. If you had to give a speech in front of the entire high school, I understand that people say that that's one of the most traumatic things you can ever do. I don't have a problem standing up in front of people, and I know others don't. You know, I like it. But when I do, I prepare. When I first started standing in front of people, what I would do is I'd write down exactly what I was going to say. Word for word, I would go over it and over it, and then I would read it into a tape recorder, and then I would listen to it, and then I would break it down, and I would practice in front of a mirror or people in my family who got tired of my presentation. But I knew my content so well that I didn't need notes. I didn't need a teleprompter. I could get up in front of a group of people, and you know, if I left out a paragraph or a couple of sentences, they never knew. They didn't have a script. They didn't know I left anything out. As long as I hit the core of what I was trying to do and I felt compelled to do it and I felt good about it and the information was great, then your attitude's up and your power comes from your confidence in the material that you're showing. I don't think we prepare enough to show the features of a high-valued piece of equipment. Think about cars today. Even the least expensive cars are well over $20,000. Moving up the line, you know, $40, $50, $60, $70, $800,000 for a vehicle that you're going to put on the road, drive through rainstorms, have gravel from the gravel truck hit the windshield in the front of the car. I mean, these are very expensive. So how good should your presentation be, and how much should you listen to what they've done before you start talking? Is it possible to sell something to somebody only using what they've researched? Never giving your opinion, never telling them anything about what you thought was more important, only using what they thought was more important. Is that possible? When I first started doing the car business, they told me I had to do a 7-position walk around. They told me the positions and where to start and where to end. So I've got somebody that's super interested in the infotainment system. They want to know the brand. They want to know where the speakers are. They want to know about the fidelity, and they want to know exactly electronic, you know, and digitally what the car will actually do. Why would I show them the trunk and the spare tire and the jack? Now, I will do that at delivery. I mean, they need to know where their spare tire is, need to know where the jack and equipment are. That's very important, but that's not what they're interested in. I still see people opening the hood of a car. I gotta be honest. First of all, there's an engine cover that covers everything under the hood, so there's nothing you can show or see. But I get it. If somebody comes in and they say the performance of the car, you know, and the power of the car are very important, then I think opening the hood, you can go, well, there it is right there. I have no idea how any of this works. And it's crazy now because we've got to the point where our technicians don't really repair anything anymore. They replace it. That's going to get bigger as time goes along. So there won't be a whole lot of repair. There'll be, you know, I'm buying another engine. I'm going to replace the engine. I'm going to replace the transaxle, whatever. And so it gets crazy when we start thinking about what we're trying to show the customer. The most important thing to me is to make sure I'm showing them what they've already researched and what's most important to them. Could it be different with every customer? Absolutely. Could it be different with 2 people there? So I was told when I first started selling, if 2 people walked up, you always shook the hand of the man first and then the woman. And I was going like, well, that can't be right. Nothing's 100%. And so what I would do is I would stop far enough away that it was kind of uncomfortable, and I would introduce myself and let them know what I was attempting to do today. And then the person that stepped forward first is the person I shook the hand. And I got to be honest with you, the majority of the time it was not the person that I thought was going to step forward. I've had children, 15 and 16-year-old kids, completely take over a sales process because they know what they're talking about. They're the ones that drove the parents in to look at the car. They were serious about studying about the car. And that always surprised me. But over time, I started realizing, well, what if I would have discarded that kid because they were only 15 or 16 years old? There's no way I would have sold the car, and I would have blamed it on the customer. It would never have been my fault. But listening and looking at your situation is the most important thing. And then your presentation needs to be based upon you said, you said, you said. There needs to be a prepared presentation in everything you sell. There are some key things that have changed. For example, if the car model has changed from a V8 to a 6 and there's no V8 option, then you need to be able to explain that. It might come up. It might be very important. You need to be able to explain the difference in the power and what the thought process was for the engineering of the car. Same thing with a 6-cylinder that's moved to a 4-cylinder. Why is it doing that? Why are we electrifying cars? What are my risks in an electrified car? Should I buy a hybrid car? Should I buy a fully electric car? Or should I stay with a fossil fuel car? Those are things you should know, but it's interesting that you may not ever have to say anything because their research may have already told them exactly what they want and why they want it. Be patient enough to listen to what they're saying. Factor this in. And I'll try to close here. I'm going to make this a multi-part series. I'm prepared. I know you are too. You know what you're going to say and you're good at what you do. You're skilled. You're professional. When I tell them what I need them to know, I already know. I've studied it. I know what I'm going to say. In fact, I might say the same thing on this feature and benefit to every single customer because I've researched it and that's what it is. Once I say it to them, first of all, they have to hear me. There are distractions. Everybody's distracted by everything. There's distractions. So I just said it and I said it properly and they didn't hear me because they were distracted. Is that possible? So I know what I'm going to say. I know how I want to finish. I know exactly how I want to lead them through this and they never heard me. Now, if they did hear you, the next thing they have to do is they have to understand it. They have to think, do I really understand what he or she's saying? Is that a fact or is that not a fact? I've got to decide if I now understand you. Now I heard you and now I've understood you and now I've got to decide whether I agree with you or not. So look at that 3-step deal. I've already shown you this and I'm already moved to this. You're still trying to figure out if I was correct or not when I said this right here. So you have to slow the pace of your presentation down. In the next series, next week, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to slow down. You can't just say slow down. You have to actually practice slowing down. Again, they don't change the commercial every time it airs. It's the same exact words with the exact same music with the exact same people. Jake from Allstate, or State Farm, sorry. State Farm, Jake. It's the same Jake every time. It's the same content every time. And you know exactly what's going to happen. So I'm telling you right now that repetition is very important to understanding. So they have to hear you. Then once they hear you, they've got to understand you. Then they got to figure out whether you're right or not. And then they have to come in and catch up with you. So it's kind of a 4-step process. I've got a 1-step. I say it and move on to the next too fast. Again, multiple times, multiple different ways. Because if I'm going to take your time and I'm going to tell you something I need you to know, then I really, as a professional, need you to actually understand it. It's amazing what will happen when you spend enough time with a customer. A lot of times you think you have to show the whole car. You don't. You have to show the things that are most important to them. Now, they need to understand how to use the vehicle when you deliver the car. I think a series of videos, there's no possible way on earth that a consumer, if you're doing like 10 minutes of a delivery showing them how pairing everything up and making sure they're not going to look at you and say they didn't understand it. They're just going to go and leave and not be able to use what they paid all the money for. How many people are driving vehicles that you've sold or products that they've bought that don't understand? People don't even understand their phones. It's amazing. They've got the last generation iPhone and they can't wait to get the next generation phone and they have no idea what the phone in their hand actually does. So I like a series of videos that you can send to the customer or put on a YouTube channel that they can source about the infotainment system, about the drive system, about service intervals. If you've done it once, if you do it one time on a video and send it to the customer. You can send it to thousands of customers. It's the same with every customer. We just need to be able to be better with a digital deal. So the first phase of presentation skills is listen. Listen and process, find out what they know, use the you said, and have prepared statements. If there's something you want to say, write it down, practice it. The more you practice it, the better you're going to become. PK52, the Saturday morning meeting.